We'll do this one.
What is your main bone of contention?
This is the only guy I respect in the entire media world. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. But I have a lot of respect for him. Because he does hard science, and he appreciates softer things. And he's very intelligent, and he takes a good approach to both. Or at least he did when I was aware of him like years ago. Hopefully he still does.
With Eric Weinstein. You should probably ask Eric that.
Sean has been nothing but civil. He's also extremely nasty. So let me say a bunch of things to Dr. Carroll. Dr. Carroll, I'd like to hear...
Oh my God, this loser. This guy is a... So many of these people are like conundrums to me. Because is this Eric Weinstein? Yeah. Eric Weinstein is a real guy who I believe has like a finished PhD with like a heavy, I think, physics and math background. So he's not like Terrence Howard, who's an actual like schizo crazy person who's crazy, who has like schizo rambled stuff. But Eric Weinstein does schizo ramble some stuff, and then he says he doesn't want to publish any of it, but he actually has like a real background. I don't understand it all.
Hear your explanation for 3 generations of flavor.
Sean Carroll does a podcast called Mindspace or Mindscape or Mind Something. I love Sean Carroll. His background is in physics as well, and I believe he has multiple like published work that's been referenced and stuff. And then he has a podcast where he explores a lot of things. He's a cool dude, but. Do you like Eric Weinstein? I do not like Eric Weinstein.
Quantum numbers of the group SU3 plus SU2 plus U1.
I have read Eric's paper. Here it is. I actually have it here. It's worse than you would think.
How dare you?
Sean Carroll is a very, very, very smart person who's very, at least from what I've seen, he's very well read, and he's a real person. Like, I would be scared, yeah.
Did I read your paper?
I highly advise you to spend more time in your physics department and less time on YouTube.
So we're not allowed to think about Eric's theory and write follow-up paper about it. And
you're very much allowed, Sean.
I have my disagreements with string theorists, my agreements with them, but I respect it, and I think that they're trying their best.
The first rule of Physics Fight Club does not talk about the problems with Physics Fight Club.
I have found myself in the awkward and unenviable position of defending the establishment heterodoxy.
Your intellectually insulting aspect reminds me of you as the Marie Antoinette of theoretical...
None of us know the answer to something. For centuries, scientists have grappled with the most fundamental question of them all. What is reality? Well, up until the 20th century, this was considered to be a matter of common sense. We lived in a material and objective reality, perhaps created by God, but one that could be accurately measured and predicted. And then came Einstein, who revolutionized everything by saying that things were a lot more relative than all that. Space could bend time. Mysterious black holes existed. The universe was expanding. But even Albert Einstein failed to truly grapple with what came next, the wild world of quantum physics, where nothing plays by the rules, even Einstein's, and things seem to exist in 2 places at once. Today, the biggest brain...
I'll just say this as somebody who, even myself, has a poor understanding of like most QM stuff. Just anytime somebody is like quoting anything from quantum mechanics and they're trying to extrapolate it to like macro things, it's always retarded. It's always not anything that you think it is, and it's just usually abused and taken in the dumbest possible way. And just okay. Destiny, that was a pop science answer for the yeah, it's just kill me. But okay, let's go. Okay, take a deep breath. We can do it. Let's go.
On the planet are loggerheads over what this all means and where science goes next. Are there multiple universes? Do we live in a matrix-style simulation? Could there be an intelligent designer? For the special Uncensored debate, I'm joined by 2 scientists with very different answers to the very big question. Sean Carroll is professor of physics.
I hate. Well, I'm sorry. I was just about to give a respect. I really can't justify it. I was going to say I hate that Sean Carroll and Eric Weinstein are presented as like equals on this topic. When I'm pretty sure Sean Carroll is like literally published in this field, I think, concerning these direct questions related to, I don't remember what his papers are 100% related to. Let's check real quick just so I know. Sean Carroll, but Eric Weinstein's PhD and everything maybe actually might have been involved in that area as well. I'm not aware of that. That could be the case, so I shouldn't stake out as strong a position on this. Carroll's worked in a number of areas of theoretical cosmology, field theory, and gravitation theory. His research papers include models of and experimental constraints on violations of Lorentz invariance, the appearance of closed time-like curves in general relativity, varieties of topological defects in field theory, and cosmological dynamics of extra space-time dimensions. He has written extensively on models of dark energy and its interactions with ordinary matter and dark matter, as well as modifications of general relativity in cosmology. He has also worked on the foundations of quantum mechanics, quantum mechanics, especially the many worlds interpretation, including a derivation of the Born rule for probabilities. Okay. Whew, good luck. Let's check real quick. What is Eric Weinstein's at least PhD on? Okay, so his PhD's in pure just mathematics. Extensions of self-dual Yang-Mills equations across the 8th dimension. Okay. Oh, maybe it's just math. I thought he had a physics background, so it's just math. Oof, okay. Well, good luck.
And philosophy at Johns Hopkins University. He hosts his own podcast, Mindscape, and draws audiences of millions elsewhere. Dr. Eric Weinstein is a Harvard-educated mathematician. His appearances on the Joe Rogan Show alone have been viewed 26 million times. He's a regular guest on Uncensored. And despite both being scientific podcasting rock stars, Dr. Weinstein and Professor Carroll have never actually appeared together until now. So welcome to you, gentlemen, and thank you for agreeing to lock horns. I have to say, very intelligent horns. Dr. Carroll, let me ask you first of all this. Are we actually here?
I think so. I'm here. I don't know about anybody else. It could be a solipsistic kind of thing. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that you can imagine meaning when you say things exist, things are real, et cetera. And I think that if you don't include you and me and tables and chairs, et cetera, exist, I think that there's a lot of things that you can imagine meaning when you say things exist, things are real, etc.
It's good that he addresses this initially. When we speak on a lot of different contextual layers, and it's important to separate out what we mean when we say, does a thing exist? That's why I say when people extrapolate like quantum phenomena to like macro effects, and they're like, oh, well, because this happens here, like who knows, you could go through a wall or something. And it's like, no, you can never go through a wall. People talk in like different contexts. Like if I ask you, like, is Harry Potter real? It's like, well, yeah, of course. Harry Potter's a real story that's told by J.K. Rowling. It's now the underlying events aren't real, but the fictional story is real. It's a real story, but it's not a real thing that happened, right? So what does it mean when we say that, right? The context is important. Intuitively, we understand it, but sometimes when people abuse these words, they can hijack your intuitions and stuff gets really weird. Like you start having weird answers or weird thoughts about the world. If somebody said, did Snape kill Dumbledore? You wouldn't answer, no, he didn't. And you go, what do you mean? Of course he did. It's like, no, neither of them are real, so neither of them can kill each other. What a stupid question, right? You wouldn't say that because you understand the context of what's being spoken about. It's important to separate that.
Et cetera. And I think that if you don't include you and me and tables and chairs, et cetera, I don't think that you're on the right track in defining what it means to exist. So yes, we're here.
What is your main bone of contention with Eric Weinstein?
As a medical profession, it drives me nuts when pundits discuss medicine and get it so wrong. You're at least honest about it, which we appreciate. Can't imagine how physicists feel listening to that, though. True. Also, I get all my medical stuff right because I've seen every episode of House, so suck a dick.
Your main bone of contention with Eric Weinstein?
You should probably ask Eric that. I mean, I'm a working physicist. I am a professor in a physics department. I write physics papers. I have found myself in the awkward and unenviable position of defending the establishment heterodoxy. Like, it's never what I imagined I would be doing, but there's good reasons why the heterodoxy is the heterodoxy. So I think that academic physics, even though I'm happy to disagree with certain choices they make about what to work on and what emphasis to put on there, is working in good faith. I think that we're trying our best to understand the universe at a deep level. String theory, which we'll talk about in the program, is one example of this. I have my disagreements with string theorists, my agreements with them, but I respect it, and I think that they're trying their best. And if someone else comes up with a better idea, they'll move what they're doing and focus on that idea. It just hasn't happened yet.
For those with smaller brain power than you, what is string theory?
That's a great question. And in fact, very famous string theorist Joe Polchinski wrote a very influential paper called What is String Theory? Decades after string theory started being a popular theory to think about. And the fact is we still don't know yet. It's an approach. You start with a very simple idea that instead of the universe being made of particle-like things at the fundamental level, like the electron being a point-like particle, the photon, et cetera, which we all knew wasn't exactly right anyway, but we can talk about that later, replace that with a little loop of vibrating string. Now, why would you do that? There's a prehistory that goes into features of the strong interactions that motivated people to do it. They looked at this idea, what if the world were made of little loops of string rather than point particles? Problematically, the theory kept failing at what they were trying to do with it, which is explain the strong nuclear force, because it kept predicting the existence of gravity. So eventually people said, well, wait a minute, gravity exists. Maybe this is a theory of gravity as well. And after many, many years of hard work on the part of people who were otherwise ignored by the community, they showed that it's actually a very successful theory of gravity and possibly everything else. You have to buy a lot of extra stuff, like extra dimensions of space-time that we don't see and so forth, what is called the holographic principle, which again, we could get into if you want to. But the theory keeps moving forward while at the same time utterly failing to connect directly with experiments. So this...
I don't know how to express this. In other words, I just complain about not being able to express it, and I bring it up over and over again, okay? There are people that talk, and when they talk, they speak for a minute, and they have a density of information. They deliver a lot of, like, information. Like, I don't know how else to say that other than information. Like, oh, okay, what is string theory? Well, there's a guy, he wrote about it, here's why it exists. Here are a couple things that resulted from them doing this, and maybe it stood in for a theory. Like we just got a lot of information in a pretty concise answer. And it wasn't, superfluous in its linguistics, in its language, right? He's not using a bunch of huge fancy words. He's not pausing to think about every fucking, it was just like a very straightforward, concise, here's an answer, and then boom, and it was done well. Oh, well, God. Okay. I'm only saying this because I don't know how Weinstein is going to conduct himself in this conversation. Oh, God.
Keeps moving forward while at the same time utterly failing to connect directly with experiments. So this has caused, a lot of hair pulling among the physics community. The theory looks very promising, but we haven't actually been able to put it to work to connect to the real world.
Okay, Eric Weinstein, your response to that?
Well, first of all, I just assume that I'm being simulated by Sean Carroll. So who knows what's real, more or less, whether we're in a simulation or whether we're in not a simulation.
It's a really good question. Before you get into your response, we don't actually know, do we? I have sometimes the most extraordinarily vivid deja vu dreams, or I dream stuff and then it seems to happen or whatever. And it always makes me sit there shaking and trembling and sweating and thinking, are we all just living in some weird simulation?
Like, fundamentally, this is a totally disconnected thing from the questions of physics that we're asking here. This is not at all related to this at all. But
how would we know?
Well, maybe we should never have legalized cannabis then. I don't know. The situation is that I think that Sean and I probably agree almost completely on everything until 1972. Then you have the first really serious situation where a mysterious term is not only introduced into our common vocabulary called quantum gravity, but it takes over as a fictitious history that the central problem of theoretical physics is the quantization of gravity, which is not true historically. You can check it on Google Ngrams, so this is just a fiction. The progress in the object that tracks our progress.
So, in my opinion, this is a very limited academic, I say, background. Okay? In my opinion, when you're talking about a particular field, a person who knows about a field is going to know the important authors and the important papers in that field, and books. The saying that we know that this is a problematic term that was introduced into quantum physics, and you can tell if you look it up on Google or whatever, that's a really weird, in my opinion, that doesn't instantly disqualify you or anything, right? Both of these guys, by the way, probably know more. I couldn't win a debate. As much as I'm about to probably say Eric Weinstein is a dipshit, I don't think I could win a debate with him on any of these topics because I don't have the physics or math background to be able to do it. But that's a pretty big red flag to say, like, well, you can Google this and shit. And it's like, okay, but whatever.
So this is just a fiction. The progress in the object that tracks our progress in physics, called the Lagrangian or the action, stops moving in 1973. And there's a bunch of wiggle words that I don't think we have time for between fundamental physics and regular physics. But then my guess is that the first problem that Sean and I will find ourselves at loggerheads over is that I think that making quantum gravity the holy grail of theoretical physics, which is repeated and perseverated ad nauseum, is a terrible crime.
And what is quantum gravity? Again, for those who are not as au fait with this as you guys, what is quantum gravity?
If I may, so there's a standard story that you'll hear, more or less. Sean is a part of a group of about 5 people who do most of the communication of theoretical physics to the American public. In the UK, there are different ones. And there's certain tropes that are repeated, and you don't hear anything else. So the trope that sounds something like this: we have 2 theories that are bedrock reality. We have one called the Standard Model, which covers 3 out of 4 forces, the non-gravitational ones, and all of the matter that we see in the universe, as well as something called the Higgs field and maybe some other fields as well. In the other theory, we have Einstein's theory of gravity, which was put into relatively final form.
You're talking about Google Ngram, which allows you to search through printed books? Yeah, but if you're the published person and you have a history of the background, why would you not just say it? Why would you not just tell us, like, give us an author and their idea? I think Sean Carroll brought up 2 in his explanation. Why not just give it to us if you have the background, right?
Matter that we see in the universe, as well as something called the Higgs field and maybe some other fields as well. In the other theory, we have Einstein's theory of gravity, which was put into relatively final form before 1920, maybe by 1917. And then the claim is that the incompatibility between the 2 of them is that one of them is a quantum theory, that is the standard model of the nuclear forces, electromagnetism, is a quantum theory, whereas Einstein's gravitational theory, general relativity, has resisted quantization. And then, as the trope goes, that incompatibility must be resolved by forcing the children of Einstein to submit to the will of the children of Bohr. And that explanation, to me, is patently absurd. There's an incompatibility in the classical version of the Standard Model before you get to the quantum version of the standard model, which is that one of them is a so-called gauge theory, and the other theory cannot be gauged successfully, at least.
And
so
why
far.
does it matter so much? Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans, that's where the trouble began.
I have no idea what gauge theory or
scheme
that means.
free.
No clue.
Network. Yeah. Hey, make the next move, not the IRS.
Why does it matter?
Yeah.
Well, it depends what you're trying to do. I mean, I can tell you why. The lead tweet in my Twitter feed is assume a traversable cosmos. If Einstein is left in force, my claim is that there are only two rocks that Elon's chemical rockets can get us to, and that we have allowed ourselves to fall into the misunderstanding of Einstein's theory as
Eric Weinstein Twitter. He said his pinned tweet. Assume a traversable cosmos. What is the joke that relativity means we can't travel anywhere or something like that? Or what is that? I'm too small-brained in physics to understand this.
as the map of two rocks that traversable cosmos. I mean, I can tell you why the lead tweet in my Twitter feed is assume a traversable cosmos. If Einstein is left in force, my claim is that there are only two rocks that Elon's chemical rockets can get us to, and that we've allowed ourselves to fall into the misunderstanding of Einstein's theory as the map of gravity rather than the territory of where we actually live. I don't think we live in space-time at all. And Piers, I just need to get to one further thing, which is that the really significant problem, I would say I am the only person in Generation X to have actually been present in the room when everything shifted towards string theory, which happened in 1983 at the University of Pennsylvania, when a fellow named Edward Witten gave the first lecture that I think he ever did publicly on string theory. And his will and his mind were so powerful and his influence so completely commanding that the entire sociology of the field turned on a dime in 83 and 84. And as such, I think I'm essentially the only person in Generation X who saw the old culture of physics become the new culture of physics. And what I claim is that Sean and I probably aren't that divided even on the mathematics of string theory. Where we are bitterly divided is that I believe that Sean thinks that the system works pretty well. I would say he's part of the two cheers for the institutions, meaning that he has a to be sure paragraph saying that the institutions undoubtedly have their problems and wish things could be done better, whereas I see an absolute collapse in the ethics, efficacy, productivity of this at our deepest levels. And if you're thinking about dark energy, dark matter, dark chemistry, all of the things that physics has done, essentially our modern world has been built by physicists. Even molecular biology and the internet come out of physicists and CERN respectively with the World Wide Web. So
it would take 5 light years to travel to the closest solar system, so traversing the cosmos is crackpot shit. Oh, there's still a lot of people that I think that are ass-pained about the fact that we'll probably never leave our solar system. What's the closest neighbor solar system? And I don't even know if the closest, any other ones we see have habitable or inhabitable planets. Oh yeah, we're fucked. We're never leaving this place. We're never leaving this place. Stay mad.
If you think about the impact of physics, more or less the story of physics is the story of the world economy in the modern era. And we will be trapped here almost certainly.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, oh, nice. Okay, we got a good facial expression. Wait, what? Okay.
Physics is the story of the world economy in the modern era. And we will be trapped here almost certainly unless you go in for science fiction tropes where we will not be able to get out of the solar system and the moon and the Mars will be our only diversification, giving the lie to Elon's claim that he's going to save humanity by making us multiplanetary. The only real diversification exists as if we shed the one atmosphere we share here and travel the cosmos.
Okay, so my takeaway from that, and was brilliantly articulated.
No, it wasn't. You just covered so much ground, and in my opinion, didn't really say much of substance at all. I don't know what I'm supposed to take from this. It sounded conspiratorial in that we got so there were mysterious dates where everything changed, and it's also tied into the global economy as well, and now all of physics is falling apart. But I feel like I didn't really get much of substance here at all. But I need to stop hedging. Oh, maybe I'm just predisposing to it. No, this answer was far less substantive than the answer that Sean Carroll gave. Sean Carroll's was way more concise. It explained something of concreteness and didn't have to incorporate theories encompassing the whole world economy and history or whatever to make a point. But okay, whatever. Maybe it's true. Maybe we'll get to this.
Sean, is that basically you are going to be responsible for the end of civilization as we know it.
Yeah, what was the question? The question, I think, is, can you explain what quantum gravity is? That was the question, right?
Sean, is that basically you are going to be responsible for the end of civilization as we know it.
Apparently, yeah, I didn't know, but now the weight is bearing down on my shoulders. Look, the story Eric just told is a kind of wacky and wildly misleading history of physics in the last 50 or 60 years. The idea of quantum gravity is a very natural one because the world runs by the rules of quantum mechanics, as far as we know. This is the International Year of Quantum because it's the 100th anniversary of really figuring out how quantum mechanics works. And the thing about quantum mechanics is it's not a theory by itself. It's a framework in which you can do theories, in contrast with classical mechanics from Isaac Newton that came before it. And gravity, our best current theory of gravity from Einstein.
Wait, my brain has to be at like 100% listening to that.
Quantum, because it's the 100th anniversary of really figuring out how quantum mechanics works. And the thing about quantum mechanics is it's not a theory by itself. It's a framework in which you can do theories, in contrast with classical mechanics from Isaac Newton that came before it. And gravity, our best current theory of gravity from Einstein, the theory of general relativity, is a thoroughgoingly classical theory. Certainly, the default expectation is that someday we will better understand gravity at the quantum level. You don't have to think that, 'cause you don't have to think anything. You're welcome to come up with better theories. But again, that's the default expectation. If you have a different point of view, there's a certain burden of proof to convince people that it's interesting to contemplate this other point of view. The idea of actually doing the detailed calculations to quantize gravity goes back to at least the 1950s, but it instantly hit roadblocks, and physicists were smart enough to know that it wasn't working the way they wanted it to. The very simple thing you do, if I can get just a little bit detailed for a second here, because people never hear this, and I think it's really, really important to understand why string theory is so popular. If you want to invent a new quantum mechanical theory of the world, the first thing you do is you ask yourself, if I have two particles and they come together and scatter, there's a probability that different things will happen. I'm going to make photons, I'm going to make electrons and positrons or whatever, and you calculate that probability. And the famous triumph of mid-20th century physics was to show that you can do that and get a finite answer. If you're sloppy about it, your answer turns out to be infinity, and your theory is on the wrong track. Everything that we know about in the physical world has a nice finite answer in this quantum mechanical realm, except for gravity. Gravity doesn't fit. And indeed, it was recognized pretty quickly that there was a good reason why gravity doesn't fit, and it was almost impossible to imagine fitting gravity in, namely that gravity interacts with everything. Gravity interacts with photons, with electrons, with quarks, with whatever. And so when you do this scattering experiment, you do the calculation, everything in the universe contributes to the infinitely big answer that you don't want to get. Apparently, what you would need is some kind of miraculous cancellation between all the different contributions from all the different fields. And people looked at that and said, we have no idea how to make that happen. Let's not worry about quantum gravity. And then string theory comes along. And again, it wasn't even trying to be a theory of gravity, but when they do this calculation, the miraculous cancellation happens in string theory. You get a finite answer to what happens when you scatter different particles off of each other. That is right now the only theory in which that miraculous happening actually works. And this was finally put together as a sort of sensible, viable theory in the mid-1980s. And it was a calculation by John Schwartz and Michael Green that showed that the theory did not have what are called anomalies. And you can look up the magazines at the time. Physics Today ran an article saying, anomaly cancellation launches superstring bandwagon. The point is,
See, so he knows leading authors, he knows their contributions, he can explain their contributions, and he even knows publications at the time about the country. Not that you necessarily have to, but these are like green flags. And also he could be wrong on everything, and I'm just whatever. But these are like, oh, okay, it sounds like a person who's like familiar with the field,
The reason why I had to go into those details is many, many physicists instantly became interested in string theory and quantum gravity who were not before. But the reason they did is not because Ed Witten is a smart guy and he towers over the field. It's because there was a calculation that showed the theory is promising. Physicists are not sheep. If Ed Witten had said we should all work on this, but everyone else looked at it and thought it wasn't very promising, he would have been ignored. But since then, there's no competitor to string theory that has had that miraculous feature that string theory has.
And just before I go to Eric to respond to that, your belief is, as a result of all this, it is more likely than not that there's a multiverse. There are many other worlds. I'm not misrepresenting you, I hope.
Well, you're saying true things for the wrong reasons. It's what philosophers call a Gettier problem. I'm a believer in the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. That's a question about the foundations of quantum mechanics, which again goes back to the 1950s. But that is more or less separate from the question of which model within the world of quantum mechanics is the right one. Is it field theory? Is it string theory? Is it loop quantum gravity? Is it something else? So I do believe that the best understanding of quantum mechanics we have right now implies the existence of parallel universes. Again, that could be true. And if we have a better theory that comes along, I'm happy to change my mind. There's also a separate idea of the multiverse.
I think Gettier problems are the thing that destroyed the epistemic theory of truth for justified true belief, right? It's the idea that you can have the wrong information about something, but still arrive at the correct answer. So you have a belief and you've actually justified the belief, and then the belief is correct, but that's not actually enough to say the belief itself is correct, because you might have justified a correct belief with the wrong information, but you ended up being correct, I think, is like a Gettier problem. Something like that. I don't know if a physicist would normally know that, or if he gets this from his philosophy background, but look how cute.
That comes with combining string theory with inflationary cosmology, a scenario of what happened very close to the Big Bang. So those are two different ideas about the multiverse. Many worlds of quantum mechanics says literally every time I make a quantum measurement, now there's two worlds in which different measurement outcomes were obtained. The string theory multiverse says very, very, very far away in cosmological distance, there's a patch of space where conditions look remarkably different than they do here.
If you're struggling,
there's a patch of string theory make a quantum measurement is very, very, very.
Not that I don't even know how many people still believe this, but some people, when they hear many worlds interpretation, they think that, oh my God, I have to choose if I'm going to ask Barbara out or if I'm going to ask Jane out. And depending on which choice I make, another universe is going to be created based on the choice that I make. The many worlds stuff has nothing to do with conscious humans making choices and like universes spinning off because of different choices are made. It's like on every like quantum event or whatever, I believe, or any would it be collapse of a waveform into some discrete event that occurs or something? I don't know if it requires a measurement or if he's just saying measurement. Because when we measure things like that, that's where we could like discretely say when a particular thing has occurred. I don't have the background on it, but I do know at the very least many worlds has nothing to do with like every time a human being makes a choice, another world is split off.
Very far away in cosmological distance, there's a patch of space where conditions look remarkably different than they do here.
What is a quantum event? Take everything I say with a grain of salt. Many grains of salt on quantum stuff. I think that like classically, I'm painting with broad brushes and brushes that I don't even own. Okay, so careful. We can be like, oh look at all these particles. Like this particle's here, this particle's here, this particle's here, this particle. That's like a cool, fun thing to do. I think with like quantum stuff, I think you generally say like probabilistically, we can say that like a thing might be here or whatever. And there's like a high degree chance that it's here, but you don't actually know the position of a thing until you measure it. And then when you take that measurement, it could theoretically be anywhere within the wave function, but like once you actually take the measurement itself, then you discretely know. But this is when you'll say that like other universes are theoretically created or branched off, or everything is happening at all points in time. If it would be anywhere else or something stupid like this, I think something like that. That's like 1% of the answer, and it might never be the right answer. So good luck.
go Piers for up to 40% off. Sleep better, wake up stronger, and show up ready for your fans, work, and your country too. Okay, Eric, your response.
Yeah, I just got completely misportrayed, and this is actually, I'm glad that this is happening.
Okay, here we go.
Because this is sort of what happens when you tangle with a group of people who are supportive of this program.
Oh boy, okay.
Not say what I think Sean is choosing to either infer incorrectly or imply that somehow the world is not quantum mechanical or quantum field theoretic, and that somehow gravity is given a hall pass to go home and enjoy.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That makes more sense. I saw 3 people say this, so it must be true. Okay, so so some people, losers, believe that when you measure a thing or when an event happens, believe it or not, this is a wave function. When you measure a thing, you figure out where something actually is. So you don't have to speak in probabilities. But apparently in the many worlds interpretation, the entire universe is just a giant wave function, and all of these things are happening simultaneously through time. It's all happening. So whether you measure a particular thing or an event happens, all of these events are all happening simultaneously, and we're just along for the ride in some universe where we're all along for the ride in all the universes or something. Yeah, something like that. Okay.
Quantum choosing to either infer incorrectly.
Okay, sorry.
I did not say what I think Sean is choosing to either infer incorrectly or imply that somehow the world is not quantum mechanical or quantum field theoretic, and that somehow gravity is given a hall pass to go home and enjoy a relaxation where everyone else has to work hard. I mean, what I said was that the idea of forcing gravity to submit to the same quantization procedures that have been successfully applied to other forces and to matter has not worked. It has stagnated the field, and that quantum harmonization is far more important. You could also decide to geometrize the quantum rather than quantize gravity and thus quantize the geometry. So because Sean's framework precludes somebody saying something outside the framework, the inference is that someone ignorantly just said that gravity can be kept out of the quantum framework, which I absolutely don't say. You'll also notice that Sean did not choose to take issue with the fact that one of these is a gauge theory and another one isn't a gauge theory, and so that there is a problem with gauging gravity and what that means, and the fact that we're getting no actual progress in the harmonization of gravity with the quantum.
Bro, seriously? Can you give an example of what he just said? It's too far beyond me. I don't know. I think in quantum stuff, everything you try to quantize or figure out like what every individual thing is. When it comes to space-time, I believe for relativity, gravity is not a thing that... I don't know what's flying over my apartment. Gravity is not like a force, or it's not like an energy that gets emitted from particles or whatever. It's a geometric feature of reality. It just is a thing. It's not like an electromagnetic force that goes out. It's like when matter exists, then the matter existing itself results in a curvature of space-time that's just a geometric feature of the universe. So he's saying that rather than trying to incorporate this geometric feature into string theory, string theorists could try to make everything geometric. But I don't know anything. I don't know how true if that's even possible, or what that even means, or because I don't know enough about this.
Quantum that can give us a green light and tell us where we're going. Like, I would happily cede to Sean all sorts of things, like the string theorists are by far the smarter group of all people trying to go beyond the standard model in general relativity. I would further see that if the task is to quantize gravity directly, the string theorists and the string theory program have been more successful. But what you just saw is the example of what is actually going catastrophic. Further see that if the task is to quantize gravity directly, the string theorists and the string theory program have been more successful. But what
my understanding, and this is like a very old understanding, and maybe there's new updates on this, and I'm just not aware of it. My understanding is the big problem is string theorists have created like a very compelling, this is the story that's told. String theorists create a very compelling mathematical thing to try to do stuff on paper, but I don't believe that, don't get me wrong, I don't think string theorists have ever made like a prediction, any kind of novel prediction, and then as a result of that future testing, we verified something that only string theory predicted. I don't think that's ever happened before, but I could be wrong on that.
What you just saw is the example of what is actually going catastrophically wrong in the field, that a dominant narrative that has been perseverated into an as-if reality has created two teams, a smart team that gets it and a dumb team that just doesn't. And that kind of toxic sociology is the true problem. And my guess is that that will recur multiple times during this thing, is that I will not be heard, and that Sean will continue to have a version of Eric that lives in his head, which shares my name, but not my understanding nor my beliefs.
This is called the clown mirror, right? That's what we call this, the clown mirror, when a person can never cite your position back to you. I still don't know, maybe I'm just not listening carefully enough. I still don't know what his beliefs are. I just hear him saying over and over again that Sean doesn't understand what I think, or he's strawmanning me, but it feels like he doesn't actually say what he believes, or if he is, I'm just not getting it, I guess. You could check the planes? What are they? What the fuck is it? Is it some stupid fucking parade or something, or what is it? God, it's so fucking annoying. Air show? Go do it somewhere else. Polished up for the air and sea show. See you in Miami? Bro, fuck you.
And that is, of course, if we get past the hurdle of whether we're all here at all. Now, Eric, you've come up with an alternative theory of everything. It's based around geometric unity, and my understanding is it's a proposed framework aiming to use...
My understanding is, and then he's reading something. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I mean, but it's just funny the way he phrased that. Like,
Unify the fundamental forces of nature, including gravity and quantum mechanics, within a single geometric structure, introducing a 14-dimensional manifold that extends space-time and embeds known particles and forces into a larger mathematical context. And the observation we had here in the research is that while ambitious, the theory remains largely unpublished in peer-reviewed literature, has not yet been formally tested or widely accepted by the physics community. Now, because you're so smart about this stuff, your geometric unity paper is 69 pages long, extremely complex, way over my head. So we did what everyone in my position does these days. We went onto YouTube and saw if we could find anybody who'd analyzed it and had a conclusion. And we found this.
Thank you to Eric Weinstein. It's an avant-garde and creative theory. Kurt here, several months later. This has been so long in the making. Geez, you have no idea. Anyhow, I wanted to say that I mean what I just said. I may have said this before in the iceberg, and if I haven't, I should have because it bears repeating. I haven't seen a theory like this come from any single individual ever. Not one that's this fleshed out or has this amount of unexampled connections within itself, as well as to what...
Is this seriously happening right now? This is it? Why are these all... What the fuck? I'm getting trolled so hard right now. Bro. Certainly there are better places to go fucking do air shows. Oh my god. What if they crash?
What's known as the theoretical physics backbone that we talked about earlier.
Now, Eric,
who is this
as
guy?
Well as to what...
Hold on, I'm just curious. YouTube at Theories of Everything. Theories of Everything. YouTube. This guy?
It's outrageous.
The AI math that left number theorists speechless. Earth is being monitored. That's just a thumbnail, to be fair. Evidence for Skinwalker Ranch. What the fuck is that? The biggest UFO leak in history. Man with 200 IQ says death isn't the end. Wait, what? Man with 200 IQ explains hell and God. Chemistry is power. Okay, I'm just curious. All right.
What's known as the theoretical physics backbone that we talked about earlier.
Now, Eric, there's lots of people doing stuff like that about it. Why do you think that the mainstream physics world is not taking this seriously enough?
Well, first of all, I disagree. You see, part of what's going on is that Sean is part of a group of physics influencers who are constantly...
Physics influencers, he calls him. Well, hold on, I'm so sorry. He might be using that word more literally, like he's influential, or he's influencing physics, not like an influencer like a YouTuber, is my guess. He's using that word more literally, I think. Never mind, that must be the case, right?
Constantly spreading misinformation, which leads to a climate of fear.
Jesus! Okay, sorry, go back on that.
Well, first of all, I disagree. You see, part of what's going on is that Sean is part of a group of physics influencers who are constantly spreading misinformation, which leads to a climate of fear. I, for example, found the following quote of Sean. What I really, really want to get across to the audience is that nobody in physics departments is discussing this with other people in physics departments. Now, I don't happen to be coming to you from a physics department at the moment, but I happen to be on a 5-day visit to a leading physics department.
Sean made the mistake of saying no one or always, and then somebody will always come at you. You said nobody's talking about this? Actually, there are 2 people talking about this, so you were wrong.
And in this situation, I just had a 9-hour conversation and talk with 3 hours or 4 hours rather of that being an explication of geometric unity. What Sean is doing constantly is attempting to say, look, let's do some pattern matching. We have a man generously in midlife. He's not trained in the subject. He doesn't appear to accept the quantum gravity program. He appears to be...
Wait, did Sean say any of this? Or am I just not understanding? Wait, what? So this guy thinks that I'm in a midlife crisis, okay, just because I took a 24% loan on a Corvette, and he says that I should have gotten something smaller, okay, and he thinks, like, what?
be possessed of the idea that a single individual, Ed Witten, caused all sorts of people who aren't sheep to cohere into a single framework that has been perseverated and doesn't seem to produce fruit. He has a telling of the tale that is, first of all, just not courageous. It's at odds with reality. From my experiences in this physics department, what I can tell you is that we have a situation in which everybody sees the problems.
Wait, real quick. Does anybody remember was it on a Chris Williams, or is it Williamson, podcast where, I don't remember if it was Eric or Brett, they were like crying, where we were like 3 days or 5 or 10 days into the Trump admin, they're like, for some reason, nobody there has called us yet. We're still waiting for the call to come and lead the government. And we don't know why they haven't called us yet. Was that Eric? Does anybody have the YouTube video for that? That was so fucking pathetic. No one has called us yet. Fuck.
When we spoke.
This is 8 months ago now. Somebody find it. It's a good meme.
And so when Sean does a 4-hour podcast, which I think maybe 3 hours I'd recommend to anybody, because Sean is one of the best explainers and also extremely good at mathematics and keeping true to actual physics in terms of his understanding. He then goes into this thing that there is no crisis in theoretical physics. And as one of my physics colleagues said last night, the first rule of Physics Fight Club is don't talk about the problems with Physics Fight Club. There's a self-evident crisis. I can show it to you numerically. Somehow, the idea is that a small number of people who are either at the top of the physics influencer pile, which is where I would put Sean, or at the top of the prestige pile.
Like, notice, this is just like politics, I guess, with like Trump and Hassan and everybody. Notice how there's not actual much like factual statement of disagreement, although I guess he kind of did with the numerical geometric thing you just mentioned. Whatever. Like it's all these weird accusations of like there's all these people together and all of them are trying to keep us down and blah blah blah. Like, you're on a show right now. This is some shit that you should say to Piers in your own time, but you're on a show right now with one of the guys. Fucking confront him on it, right? Like, if I had an opportunity to do an hour debate with Hassan, I'm not going to be sitting here talking about like, oh, like, why do you say all this fake shit all the time? I'll bring it up for sure. But like, most of us are gonna be like, hey, oh shit, I got you here. Well, let's go fact by fact by fact by fact by fact. Well, like, why do you think that this still happened? Why do you think Al-Ali Hospital was still bombed by Israel? What's your evidence for that? Where do you think the knockback came from? Where's your evidence for that? Like, how many, like there are like questions, like you have him here, like talk to him. You have the guy here. Don't complain about the meta, like you address the issues. You got the dude right here.
File in research have held a view that is completely at odds with reality, whose key feature is the exclusion of different perspectives. So when, for example, I can tell, I probably can guess the AI, Piers, from which you've got the analysis of geometric unity. What you see is a very strange situation where a group of people go around attempting to throw shade on anyone who questions whether there's a massive problem in physics that everybody who's actually in the game can see with their own eyes. Now, if you ask me what's going on with geometric unity, I can say something very simply that because you have a very large viewership, will go out to many people. You won't understand it, but it'll be over very quickly, and it should be an astounding comment.
Okay.
If you take a Lorentzian metric as a section of a bundle of pointwise Lorentz metrics and pull back the positive Weyl spinners with suitable passing to maximal compact subgroup, you get one generation of Petit-Salam grand unified fermions. Now, that was
I have no idea what any of that means, but
quick, but what it really just said is that general relativity knows the standard model. Anybody of Sean's ability should be able to parse that 20-second sojourn and say, is that something we know? Is that something that might be interesting? Then what we'll have is we'll have the typical physicist large language model conversation in which physicists will ask, do you have a new prediction at anything at electroweak scale? Which is a question that doesn't get asked to the string theorists. So you have a differential treatment in which the physicists remember what physics used to be like in the mid-20th century when they're hearing a competitor, and they choose to forget it when they're hearing something that comes from this other community. Hence, I think what you're going to find is if you look at this 3-hour documentary that was just made on geometric unity, which itself has flaws, by a person who does not have a PhD, it evidences the highest level of understanding of geometric unity found in a second person over 41 years of trying to have conversations with physicists.
like, if you believe in all of this so much, why not just publish a paper on it and then open it up to like the actual academic world to criticize and publish response papers to? I feel like there is something that people, I feel like, don't grab onto enough is researchers they like kind of like heterodox bullshit or not heterodox, I'm sorry. Like they might like defending ideas that are part of the establishment, like orthodox ideas or whatever. They might like this, but there are also other researchers who really like fighting with people too, who are like, oh, this is a topic that I realize, I'm gonna fucking publish a paper and get some fucking noise made. Like, I feel like you have these people in research. I've heard enough people say there are enough of these researchers on both sides. Two people in chat said he did Destiny, he did publish a paper. My understanding is he didn't try to publish with any journal. He just threw a PDF up on his website. But
who tend to be polarized by one collection of theories led by a single individual.
Now, everybody knows how much I enjoy my tea, and I'm very happy to say that today's show is sponsored by Peak's Pure Fermented Teas. These are not your average brews. They're sourced from 250-year-old wild trees in the Himalayan foothills, which are untouched by modern farming. No pesticides.
there's a video on this, but for whatever reason, the campaign doesn't reach out much. I don't know why, but this is an observation, so I don't want to take crap for observing it. There are many dissident experts out here. Their phones are not ringing. And when you point this out, it's treated the wrong way. Boo-hoo, everyone has a handout. It's so dumb, it's funny, because these are exactly the people who have stood up for free for 30 plus years. Just effing call them. They precede MAGA. Bottom line, there aren't enough hardcore MAGA among the experts who know where the bodies are buried to run and fix the government. But there are dissident experts everywhere who will work even better in these positions. People who are aligned with the idea of clearing out the rot and who aren't famously aligned with ideology. Patriots, if you will.
No fertilizers, just nature at its best. Pure delivers a full spectrum of prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics around. The next Pure from Piers.
You can watch this for a minute or two to get some of the problems with geometric unity. Feel free to skip around to when he's talking to the Asian dude. The Asian dude breaks it down really well.
To brass tacks. What is geometric unity all about, and why does nobody in physics care about it? Admittedly, the specifics of this are beyond my pay grade. Fortunately, we have none other than Tim Nguyen himself to walk us through the nitty-gritty. To offer some preemptive context, many of the early objections had centered around how it's not actually a complete theory. It's all centered around something called the Sheob operator, which he does not rigorously define, claiming that it was written on his notes in college, and he's pretty sure it worked, but now he can't remember it. It does not incorporate quantum theory, which any theory of everything would absolutely have to do. It is mathematically inconsistent, and there are numerous other glaring omissions that make his work both incomplete and invalid. But let's hear all this from Tim.
Tim, thanks so much for joining us. We're ready to take a little bit of an in-depth look at geometric unity, so take it away.
Great. Yeah, glad to be here, Dave. What I have here on the whiteboard is a display of the two papers in question. There's Eric's paper on the left, his geometric unity paper.
Oh, these guys... Wait. Is the Asian guy Timothy Nguyen? I didn't hear the name. Is he the guy who published the response paper?
That he released on April 1st of 2021. And then there's my response paper, which I wrote with Theo Polya, my anonymous co-author, back in 2021. It predates the geometric unity paper because it was based on his lecture that was on YouTube.
Yikes, when there's a response paper before you've even published or printed your paper or whatever. I don't know what you were even saying.
Recorded in 2013. Nevertheless, it contained all the essential details, but just for the sake of history, that was what the material of the response paper was based upon. Anyways, let's just go ahead and dive in with that context.
Okay. Sean Carroll.
Sean.
Well, I find it very telling. I don't know. It makes me sad that you are looking for a second opinion about geometric unity and you go to YouTube.
Wait, real quick. Oh, no, he did the thing. Good job, Sean. Wait.
But it's just...
It was this.
I am getting so much abuse out there from people on the right, and nobody on the right stands up. I'm just like, wow, you guys are a bunch of cowards. You can't even stand up for your friends who you fought shoulder to shoulder with. And in particular, I'll be entirely honest, one of the most off-putting things I ever heard in my life is that when you look at people who've been fighting the war longer than you are, and then you say, well, you didn't endorse. Like, did you ever call? Did anyone ever call? Never. Not a single phone call. Nobody cared about my endorsement.
Eric, I have to tell you, you don't get any apologies or, well, you don't get any, someone coming around and saying, oh, I should have done this.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that you have an opportunity. If my endorsement mattered, like when they called Bobby said, I have things that I want. Yeah. I had things that I wanted to know. What are you going to do about universities? What are you going to do about science? To hear Chris Rufo go off about, we're going to stick it to the Ivies. I'm like, well, I understand getting rid of the woke. I understand getting rid of the DEI. I understand all these things. You're going to destroy the crown jewels of American science? Who are you? Exactly. My claim is you have...
Do you think there's much left there at the universities?
Oh my God, go to a seminar. And, I go in economics, I go in mathematics, I go in physics, and I go in biology. Yes, there's so much great stuff happening in universities. I'm a huge critic of American universities. But the current group of people doesn't know anything about what they're destroying. The USAID stuff. That's a laundry list of weapons that we're trying to destabilize regimes. And now you can see that, we were trying to destabilize our own people, right? You have to ask, can I at least get a hearing with what are these things? If you just go line items, as I said, you wouldn't want to do it after October 7th if you were auditing Israel. Say, why are we providing pagers, walkie-talkies, and tech support to Hezbollah? And because that's part of like the secret statecraft that we were up to. And the fact that it's cancerous, the fact that it's wasteful, the fact that it's immoral and illegal and all these sorts of things. Those are very important facts. But you do have to realize that you can't just keep saying sunlight is the best disinfectant in Vox Populi Vox Dei. Does this...
Fuck. Sometimes he says things that are... He's not an idiot. That's what drives me the craziest when he's like schizo or whatever. But... anytime you hear somebody auditing or talk about auditing a thing or talk about like helping a thing and they say line item, it is always the most retarded analysis you've ever heard in your entire life. Just always know that. That's like a shortcut to like, oh shit, I can ignore everything this guy says. Thank God. Because he said line item. He's a fucking retard. Stupid.
And see what pops up. I don't think that's the standard to which we would like to aspire. There are professional physicists right there.
Carol.
Well, I find it very telling. I don't know. It makes me sad that you are looking for a second opinion about geometric unity and you go to YouTube and see what pops up. I don't think that's the standard to which we would like to aspire. There are professional physicists right there in your country who work on understanding quantum gravity, field theory, geometry at a deep level, and you could ask them what they think. Look, there's a lot of talk so far about sociology, and I'd much rather talk about physics. But I would like to let people out there know who might be working outside the academic physics community that it is 100% possible to have a good idea and have it have an impact on what physicists do. But it's not easy. You have to do a certain amount of work to show that your theory is worth the time, that it is respectable, that it is interesting, that it is promising. The first thing you got to do is make sure that your theory makes contact with modern physics as it is understood. If you have a new paper out, physicists are going to look at it. They're going to look for, where's the Lagrangian? Where's the interactions? Is the proton stable? Is there dark matter? Like, how does it fit into what I already know?
Those are all different levels of the stack, Sean.
Eric's paper has none of that. You would also ask, has the theory been shown?
What did Eric say? Those are all different levels of the stack? Or I didn't hear what is...
Unstable? Is there dark matter? Like, how does it fit into what I already know?
Those are all different levels of the stack, Sean.
Those were all different levels of the stack, Sean? I think, is that what he's saying? Different levels of abstraction. Oh, those are all different levels of abstraction.
Is there dark matter? At it, they're going to look for, where's the Lagrangian? Where's the interactions? Is the proton stable? Is there dark matter? Like, how does it fit into what I already know?
Those are all different levels of the stack, Sean.
No, I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he's saying the stack, Sean. I think. I don't know. Don't care. What I do care is that Sean's answer is, again, very good. You're publishing a novel theory. How do you make people care about it? Connect it to something that they already understand, or explain something in a different way, or make a prediction about a thing that they already know, or look for unencountered problems that it has an explanation for, or like, does it connect with some way with current modern stuff? Yeah.
Eric's paper has none of that. You would also ask, has the theory been shown to be viable in a very basic way? Is it stable? Is it free of anomalies? Is it finite in the sense of the quantum mechanical calculation that I already mentioned? Again, none of that is there. Ooh. Are there any new predictions? Eric says, and completely correctly, string theory doesn't make any new predictions either. But also, I really don't want people to get the idea that string theory has some dominant picture. In my department at Johns Hopkins, we have... Let me just finish, and then you can talk. I think it's a good system. In my department at Johns Hopkins, we have 6 professors in the theoretical physics group. One of them does string theory, and even he only does it sort of half-time. I wish we had more, honestly. This is very typical. Even at the most stringy departments, it's maybe half the people who do string theory. There are plenty of other approaches being advocated, and many of them do make different predictions, and we're looking for them in cosmology and astrophysics and elsewhere. And finally, does your theory solve any interesting problems that we already thought we had? That's the reason why string theory became interesting, because we had this problem with quantum gravity that it gave infinite answers, and string theory solved that problem. And again, I see none of that in Eric's paper. So it's very possible that somewhere in Eric's theory there are interesting ideas. But
do you see how nice this answer is? First of all, it's 100 times easier to understand than Eric's speech. I don't like, in terms of using complicated mathematical or physics terms or whatever, he hasn't had to use any of that, right? He's gonna be a very clear and concise answer for, this is what his theory failed to explain. It's why nobody dealt with it. It's why nothing connected to it. We make comparisons to string theory about, what it could possibly do. And he's saying, well, string theory doesn't have to answer these questions either. And then Sean's explaining, well, this is why string theory was, accounted for, or this is why people cared about it. It made this unification of gravity, blah, blah, blah. Like, these are just good answers. It's such a good answer. It's an information dense, not bullshit answer. I love this guy, okay?
Paper. So it's very possible that somewhere in Eric's theory there are interesting ideas, but he has given us no reason to think that it is a promising theory. I encourage other people who would like to have an impact on the research agenda of modern physics to take these easy steps rather than going on podcasts and talking about their victimization.
Okay. A good answer now from Eric, a good answer would either be one is to directly contradict something Sean has said. So actually, my paper does explain A, B, and C. You only need one or two examples, right, to show that Sean didn't read it or understand it. You claimed it didn't explain this. It does actually explain these things. And then that would be a good start. And then the second thing would be to say that it does like demonstrate some particular novel thing, like to address the substance of what he said. Either he tried to publish it somewhere and that he was rejected, or he does make novel predictions but nobody's like taking them seriously, or something like that. Something to respond to the substance of what Sean has said. Will he do that, or will he talk about the evil academia monster machine? Whew. Let's go.
To take these easy steps rather than going on podcasts and talking about their victimization.
Okay, Eric, it's always a pivotal moment in these debates when you put your glasses on. So I'm bracing myself.
First of all, Sean has been nothing but civil throughout our relationship. He's also extremely nasty, but I really appreciate the civility, and I attempt to respond in kind. Sean and I really shouldn't be divided, but we appear to be. I don't understand it. He did respond. It just shows that none of this is serious.
Piers should say real quick, I need you to turn your phone around right now. And if there's any kind of like AI answer on this, you're immediately banned from all media appearances for the rest of your life. And maybe your children and grandchildren. Maybe your whole lineage is banned forever. I don't trust people reading from anything. I feel like people are AI answering fucking everything. And it actually drives me crazy. Now, maybe he's referring to notes or something here. I actually don't know maybe he'll bring up what he's about to refer to, but God, that triggers the fuck out of me. Sorry.
He did respond. It just shows that none of this is serious.
Oh, he's reading a tweet of Sean's? Okay, that's acceptable then.
Speaking about what I'm talking about, he said, this is not something that is going to be a thing. He also says that he hasn't read it. So let me say.
Did he pick up his phone just to read that tweet? Why not just address him right here and right now? This is another bad faith strategy that people do, is when they bring you on to talk and they start saying like, you tweeted this or you tweeted that. It's okay to lead with that and then ask for an elaboration. But it's like, are we just here to debate on like a past tweet, or do you want to have like an active, dynamic, like real life, present in time conversation? Because these are two.
Say a bunch of things to Dr. Carroll. Dr. Carroll, I'd like to hear your explanation for 3 generations of flavor chiral fermions with the observed quantum numbers under the group SU3 cross SU2 cross U1.
Okay, he's just bullshit. This guy's a fake. This is a loser, right? Is it not immediately super obvious, right? There are so many different ways of substance that he could respond to Sean, but he's not. It's such a, I don't know if it's performative or a grift, or it's so cringe.
In another podcast, you said, before I listen to your theory, you should listen to my Sean Carroll's theory. My theory is known as the standard model. I can give you an explanation for why SU3 cross SU2 cross U1, why there are 3 generations, why 16 particles in a generation, why the observed quantum numbers are the way they are, why the Higgs sector comes out of seemingly nowhere with a quartic potential with a quadratic term, why the Yukawa coupling is just so in order to produce mass when the weak force forbids a mass directly in the Dirac operator. Sean knows what every single thing that I just said is in that statement. Why Sean chooses to misportray the fact that I can say why there should be dark matter, what the dark energy...
Like, were any of these things in his paper? Because why didn't it... Like, that would make this response at least strong. He could say, like, oh, well, I can explain all of this, and it is explained in my paper, and nobody's dealt with that. That would make it strong. I can't tell if it is or not, though, but based on how he phrased his answer.
Why Sean chooses to misportray the fact that I can say why there should be dark matter, what the dark energy is, what the exact quantum number assignments are for the 2 families that are luminous that have yet to be seen, I have no idea, because Sean also proudly says that he hasn't looked at it and hasn't read it. That's why he says that there are no Lagrangians in it. I have no idea where Sean gets this stuff.
Oh, so like that was a direct confrontation. But why not be more concise? You don't have to pad it with all this extra bullshit. So there were Lagrangians. I don't even know what it means to have a Lagrangian. But did he have these Lagrangians in his paper, I guess? And Sean didn't grapple with that? Or we'll hear what Sean says, I guess.
Sean is insistent that the idea that somehow I am not choosing to go through the usual channels and instead talking as he is right now via YouTube is somehow significant when I've just given talks in 3 different countries on dark energy. And by the way, every time I talk about talking about this, somebody is telling me, don't talk about the fact that you're actually in a physics department. And what I'm trying to tell you is I give talks in physics departments, I hang out with physics colleagues, I'm welcomed at places like the Institute for Advanced Study, MIT, et cetera, et cetera. And yet I have to deal with this nonsense. I talk to both physics colleagues. You know, right now you've got a giant problem called something called DESI or DESI, the dark energy, spectroscopic instrument, which is at the moment going after Einstein's unwanted cosmological constant. That is not a constant. The dark energy is not a constant term. That is the only term that you can put into the Einstein field equations, because the Einsteinian curvature satisfies an automatic differential equation called divergence free. So if you have another term in the equation, it has to have the same property. There's only one known automatic equation, which is that the metric of Einstein that creates space-time is annihilated by its own Levi-Civita connection. And Sean, you're misrepresenting things, because I'm going to give a formula for the dark energy. I do all sorts of things that you have no idea of, because your attitude, which you repeat in other podcasts, and I highly advise you to spend more time in your physics department and less time on YouTube, is that this is not a serious thing. Nobody's taking it seriously. And your misportrayal of the situation is nearly constant for reasons.
Just another expression of the culture of victimhood. He is dying on this hill because he's convinced he's a special genius, but really just a mediocre physicist who doesn't have a good theory. Yeah, he will go to the grave like repeating all of the exact same things he's doing now. This is one of my biggest fucking fears in life, is having some belief or theory and you're so obstinate and you're so resistant to change and you're so unwilling to introspect or change on it that you just go to the grave believing in the same thing. And then, I don't know, if on your deathbed you realize like, oh fuck, I was wrong about this thing 45 years ago that I've dedicated my fucking entire life to pushing. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's like a horror movie for an individual, but.
That completely elude me.
Sean?
The good news is I have read Eric's paper. Here it is. I actually have it here, right here.
Uh-oh.
And it's worse than you would think. You know, it just very quickly, it starts off by saying the author is not a physicist and is no longer an active academician, but is an entertainer and host of a podcast. This work of entertainment is a draft work in progress, and it may not be built upon. So we're not allowed to think about Eric's theory and write a follow-up paper about it in
you're very much allowed, Sean.
To everything that is normally done in scientific discourse. You hope that people build upon your theories. You don't try to prevent them. And later on, it says,
Sean,
this document is an attempt to begin recovering. I'm going to read this. This document is an attempt to begin recovering a rather more complete theory, which at this point is only partially remembered and stitched together from old computer files, notebooks, recordings, and the like, dating back to as far as 1983. And this is why this paper is not going to appear in the peer-reviewed literature. It's not serious. It's a dog ate my homework kind of thing. If you have a dark matter thing, if you have a dark matter prediction, if you have a dark energy prediction, I want to see a plot.
Hold on, wait. They kind of alluded to this, and I read something in chat. Wait, so does Eric Weinstein think that he or somebody else like had figured all of these things out in the 80s, but like the answer was lost, and he's like trying to cobble back together the lost knowledge of what he or other physicists used to know or something? Is that Destiny? Yeah. Okay. All right. Based.
If you have a dark matter thing, if you have a dark matter prediction, if you have a dark energy prediction, I want to see a plot in the paper. I want to see redshift versus distance. I want to see a calculation of a relic abundance so I can figure out how much dark matter is supposed to be. If you do that, people will pay attention to the theory. It's very possible.
Sean, first of all, how dare you? Second of all, if you're going to go by the standards of the no, Sean, how dare you cast shade and aspersions of the kind that I wouldn't seek to cast on you, but I will now.
Remember, Sean Carroll is a big boy published physicist, and not like published like one or two random papers. I don't think he's like a field industry or not industry, like a. No, I think so. Actually, I think some of the stuff he worked on was like leading in the field. Like people built upon it for other things. He's a big boy publisher. Let me just put it that way. It's not like, oh, I have a PhD thesis that's published. He's like a big boy publisher. He's like published real work. I don't know. I think he said he's active right now as a professor. Like he knows his shit really well. This is not a guy who like was like a Dr. Robert Malone who published one paper on mRNA vaccines 30 years ago and now thinks he's like the fucking expert, the bee's knees on everything. This is a big boy physics guy. He's been cited over 30,000 times. Okay. He's a professor at Johns Hopkins. Or Johns Hopkins? Okay.
No, Sean, how dare you cast shade and aspersions of the kind that I wouldn't seek to cast on you, but I will now. Okay. I'm not seeking your favor, nor do I need to seek your approval. As you know, you failed to gain tenure.
I do not need your approval. You literally want people to review your paper, don't you? You need the field to engage with your work. How are you going to sit here and say, I don't need you? Well, isn't that what you were complaining about, is that you don't have any serious engagement or critical engagement with your work? Although apparently he does. He just doesn't want to engage with the engagement, but.
Nor do I need to seek your approval. As you know, you failed to gain tenure at the University of Chicago. You're not highly regarded in the field. And again, I'm only returning the shade in which you just yourself cast. I wouldn't have done this otherwise. You then spent time as a non-tenured faculty at Caltech, and you only gained tenure in a non-standard professorship. You're not a leading person in the field. My belief structure about this is that you imagine that I'm coming to you saying, "Oh, Sean Carroll, tell me which graph I should do so that I can please you." As you know, because you've read the paper, what you said about Lagrangians is false. What you said about predictions is false. My concern is what you did is that you seized upon something where people have built on my ideas since 1994. The equations that Natty Seiberg and Ed Witten introduced that took over the world were called the insufficiently nonlinear equations when I was at Harvard in 1987 and introduced them. The question is why Piers as an entertainer rather than as a physicist? First of all, neither you nor I are trained as physicists, Sean. You're actually trained as an astronomer. What you have in this situation is that you and I are both interloping in a field that is not the one to which we trained. That doesn't bother me about what you're doing. I've enjoyed some of your papers. I've thought very poorly of others. You have a wide range of interests. I think you're very creative. Your intellectually insulting aspect reminds me of you as the Marie Antoinette of theoretical physics influencers. I'm not here to please you. You know that there are tables in the document that you're reading that have plenty of predictions. You know that it solves plenty of problems. What you are doing is creating an environment of fear where every university worries, what does it mean to talk to this person? And what I would say to you is you are commenting on the effect that you are in fact inducing. You and a small cadre of people are like intellectual border collies of physical sciences, casting shade and aspersions on those who are succeeding where the quantum gravity, string theoretic, and M-theoretic programs are failing.
Sean?
Look, I mean, I didn't say anything about Eric as a person, his history, or anything like that. I said things about the paper.
Red flag. There are people who identify so strongly with their ideas that when you attack the ideas, they view it as like a personal attack. This happens a lot in debate. Like when you have to be very careful, if you care about the other person's feelings, how you talk about some types of ideas, because people, they become like part of their identity, basically. They're no longer defending ideas. They're defending like extensions of themselves. So it's funny that he's like, this paper, fails to address, these particular things and it's missing that and that. And then Eric's response is like, okay, well, your dick is 2 inches long. And I fucked your mom. So now what, right? Now we've both insulted each other. And it's like, well, that's not really the same. That's not really the same thing. but okay.
Theoretic and M-theoretic programs are failing.
Sean?
Look, I mean, I didn't say anything about Eric as a person, his history, or anything like that. I said things about the paper. Everything he says about me is like 90% true, as many things he says. The paper is not giving us any reason to think that this approach is promising. There is no quantum mechanics in the paper. There's no attempt at showing that this solves any of the known problems of quantum gravity. Again, it's not just about Eric, it's about anyone. If you want to make an impact on the physics research community, you have to give them a reason to think that what you do is promising.
Sean, you have a serious problem with dark energy that you're developing, and it's going to go right through being a problem with lambda CDM to eventually being a problem with the Einstein field equations.
I also, this is just a heuristic, and it might not be, it's just a heuristic, okay? So it's not like determinative of like whether a person is stupid or not, but anytime people ramble off on random other points constantly, people do it in interpersonal fights as well, right? Somebody will say something like, I wanted pizza today, and I told you what kind of pizza I wanted, and then you brought back, the wrong type of pizza. And then somebody's like, well, when you texted me, you didn't specify, and then I asked you didn't respond. And they're like, okay, like your mom says that you have problems when she asks for stuff, and the cars needed an oil change for like 6 months. It's like, wait, what the fuck? What? Excuse me. This is not your opportunity to unload every fucking random ass complaint that you have about a person. Okay, excuse me. We're dealing with this thing. Anytime there's some type of like horizontal unloading of random shit that people do that always makes me hyper sus, because if you truly believed in the strength of a particular argument that you were having, or like on a particular thing, you can bring in kind of like supporting stuff. I think that's fair. But I feel like he's done this a few times where Sean has asked him kind of a question, like, why not like center on this, whatever Sean is saying, you don't have this thing, there was no quantum mechanics, like center on a thing, instead of him being like, you bring this up, but one thing you fail to realize, you will in 10 years, is that you're actually, your 10x hyper vigilantism neo-Lagrangianian point is going to run right through your quadratian two-dimensional spheroid holic blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, why? What is this? You're word vomiting so much. Like he's wasted so much talking time and he hasn't said much of substance.
right through having being a problem with lambda CDM to eventually being a problem with the Einstein field equations themselves, perched as they are atop the space of metrics as a completely inadequate space of field content. What you've just said, the aspersion that you have just cast, you are simply not qualified to say. What you have said is that I have given no reason. Let me imagine that that paper, which was a draft rushed to get to an April 1st date, remains in a world where Sam Altman and...
A draft rush to get to an April 1st date. Did he have to publish for April Fools or what?
Elon Musk continue to compete for better and better AIs. What would you say if at some point those AIs then got to that paper and said, holy cow, that is exactly what we've been missing. This thing solves all sorts of problems, and the problem that we have is that a group of influencers with a penchant for being, and this is becoming one of my least favorite words, although I didn't have any negative association until recently, debunkers. That pass, you are simply not qualified to say. What you have said is that I have given no reason. Let me imagine that that paper, which was a draft rushed to get to an April 1st date, remains in a world where Sam Altman and Elon Musk continue to compete for better and better AIs. What would you say if at some point those AIs then got to that paper and said, holy cow, that is exactly what we've been missing. This thing solves all sorts of problems, and the problem that we have is that a group of...
What is this answer? You think my paper is bad? What if in the future an AI goes to the paper and it's not bad? Like what?
Influencer.
Let's ask Grok. Let's ask Grok what he thinks about the paper. Like, really? That's the answer we're going? Okay.
With a penchant for being, and this is becoming one of my least favorite words, although I didn't have any negative association until recently, debunkers. The problem, Sean, is that you and I are naturally allied on almost everything. We're not very far apart.
He keeps saying this, we're not very far apart. That doesn't matter, though. You're talking about the things you disagree on now, not the things you agree on. So I don't know why he keeps saying this over and over again.
Don't disagree with the standard model. I think the standard model is the most beautiful piece of differential geometry before it becomes theoretical physics. But one of the things that you just said is that it's a classical field theory that is not quantized. As you well know, there was a revolution in the 1970s, which said...
Bro, your paper came out how many years ago? Yeah, he says he rushed to publish it. You can update it, or you can publish a response, or you can amend it, can't you? It's not like it's in a real journal and you don't have access to it. Isn't it just like a fucking PDF on your website, no? Like, just change it or add to it. What the fuck?
Said that we blew Hamiltonian analysis, and that in fact every phase space carrying a symplectic form can be treated.
Oh, another one of these things. Okay, another one of these rambles. Okay.
Locally, as if that symplectic form is the curvature of a line bundle, and the L2 sections of that line bundle form a Hilbert space, and the P and Q coordinate functions can be promoted to operators. It said that
I can't believe that people I don't know what he just said, but like I can't believe people listen to this and think that there's like some profound shit being said here. Like that people can't just immediately see through this. Like, why are you just rambling on some crazy shit that none of us could follow? Like, what? What is the purpose of this?
What you get when you stop grape juice from becoming vinegar. And in fact, Hamiltonian analysis is what happens when you take a physical problem and you stop it from quantizing itself. That was one of the great errors of our time, that Hamiltonian analysis was actually pointing the way to saying that most classical problems contain the seeds of their own quantization. You know all this stuff, and I know this stuff. We know the same people. We probably can work in the same notation. My guess is that if you and I got over whatever this bizarre tension is between us and buried the hatchet, my guess is that after 2 days, you'd say, boy, I really just didn't understand what he was saying.
You had all this time to talk to Sean about what you were saying. This could have been a super interesting debate / conversation where you're like, hey, you claim that I haven't done A, B, or C. You know, let's dig into A, B, or C. Let's go. But it's not. It's just this opining on your victimhood and attacking Sean and crying that he doesn't agree with your paper and crying that, you know, he's being critical of your paper. Like, you just wasted this whole fucking show.
You know what? I would love that to be the case, and maybe you guys can make that happen. Talking of dark energy, a little bit of dark energy has crept into this debate. Okay. So I'm going to try and end on a slightly lighter note, and these will require much shorter responses. I just want to see whether you guys, I mean, as you said, Eric, you agree about a lot of stuff. Do you agree about...
Most things.
Yeah, most things. I want to ask whether you agree about some of these fundamental things, which have struck me as interesting about where we are. Professor Stephen Hawking, I did the last television interview that he ever gave before he died. He said that the biggest threat to mankind was if artificial intelligence...
Is it just like how Elon talked about software? No, there are different types of bullshitting. If I had to guess, I'm guessing here. I truly am guessing. My guess is that Eric Weinstein is not saying incorrect stuff. Like, I think he has a formal background and he says pure mathematics, and he probably understands the physics stuff well enough that everything he's saying in physics is true. I don't understand. I don't know what the fuck a Hamilton problem is. This is like a Federalist paper to me, okay? So he's saying stuff that's true. Elon is just an idiot. Elon couldn't even recite things that are true about, models of software development or whatever. He couldn't even do that. He's just a pure fucking retard. This guy is like a slightly more advanced retard.
The biggest threat to mankind was if artificial intelligence learned to self-design. Do you agree, Sean?
Why? Whatever, I guess. Physics is boring. Okay. We'll just go after something completely different. Okay.
No, I don't think that's the biggest threat to mankind. I think that AI is a threat, but in a completely different way than it's usually portrayed.
Yeah, the threat is people getting all of their fucking answers from AI and going online to debate about it.
The AIs that we're working on now are not really the kind that will reach general intelligence in the way that we think about it. There's no obstacle to reaching that in principle, but the currently popular architectures aren't on that trajectory. The real problem, as we saw just this week with the Chicago Sun-Times, is people are lazy and people use AI for the wrong reasons. This was a very, very trivial example where they published an article about the fun summer book reads this year, which was completely hallucinated by an AI, and they just published it in the newspaper. That doesn't really hurt anybody, but when these architectures are being put to work in things that could actually hurt people, that's when AI is going to have a really bad impact.
Eric?
I would say I completely agree with Sean. I believe that the biggest problem and threat to humanity is that we share a single atmosphere. We can have different land masses, but we have to share one atmosphere, and that pathogens, radiation, and climate are all bound up in this one resource. And I would say that the biggest problem that I'm seeing is a general madness in the American political system on both left and right, where we went from being the thing that was like the control rod stopping the world from going critical to a crazy isolationist perspective where the Democratic Party is not able to restrain the worst excesses of the Republican Party, and conversely. And I fear that what we're going to see is a move towards nuclear proliferation, which remains the single greatest threat, which is what we physics people unleashed in November of 1952 at a thermonuclear level. And I think since we've never used such a thing in anger, and we've had a test ban treaty since the early 60s, we are completely unprepared for what the cost is of retreating as the world's policeman.
Fascinating. Sean, will we ever be able to time travel, either forwards or back?
Well, forwards, I try and travel all
we're all time traveling forward. What do you mean?
all the time. Yesterday, I time traveled 24 hours into the future, and here I am. I mean, that's not that hard. Einstein showed us that there's a trick. You can even travel into the future faster by either moving near the speed of light or by hanging out in a strong gravitational field like a black hole. Backwards in time, no. I don't think that we're going to be able to do it. I've written papers about it. It's something that is, I would say, conceivable but not plausible. We know how it might work in principle, but all of the indications are it's not going to work in practice.
Eric?
I got to slow it down for this answer. Here we go.
Well, as Sean has thoroughly digested my paper, he knows that I believe that there are either 5 or 7 dimensions of time in a 14-dimensional world, which is split 5 of time, 9 of space, or 7 of time, 7 of space. So when you talk about time travel, it's times travel. And only when time is one-dimensional is there an arrow of time. If there were 2 dimensions of time, you'd have a whirlpool. 3 dimensions would result in a right-hand rule of time. These things are technically called orientations. One of the things that is really interesting about multiple dimensions of time, which leads to something which is very poorly studied called ultra-hyperbolic equations, is that you have the opportunity of going back in time without going back through time.
So like even this isn't completely wrong. Like for instance, I operate on the 3rd or 4th dimension of time a lot when I say I'm going to be live at 1 o'clock every day. If you right hand rule that, okay, when all 3 wrap around, sometimes that's 2 or 4 or 5 o'clock, you know, it happens.
Just as you can play a record, and when the stylus comes to the inner circles of the record, you can jump again to any track that you like. On a cassette tape, you have to go back through time. So my belief is no, we will not go back through time, but we will have to figure out how to stop thinking in terms of initial conditions, because it is only in the case of a single dimension of time leading to hyperbolic equations that you have that luxury. So I think...
Why does Sean not sound schizo and Eric does? The worst case interpretation of this would be that Sean knows what he's talking about and can communicate that clearly, and Eric Weinstein is too busy trying to sound or appear to be intelligent rather than to construct a coherent answer. That would be the least charitable way of approaching it. The other way of approaching it could just be that Sean is just a very effective communicator and Eric is just not that great of a communicator, that he's giving answers that I'm ascribing malice to, but he could just be a bad communicator. Like I see a lot of people in chat incorrectly saying, oh, Destiny likes Sean because Sean communicates like a professor. Sean does not communicate like a professor. Sean communicates like a good professor. There are plenty of professors that are dog shit and horrible when it comes to communicating concepts to students. So the idea that like every professor sounds like Sean is absolutely fucking not true. Sean sounds like a good communicator, of which there are good professors who are also good communicators. And Eric is not great at communication. Now, I would argue that Eric does so many fucking podcasts and all this other bullshit. He doesn't really have much of an excuse to be a poor communicator, which maybe lean more towards the side of he's just trying to sound smart, and that's why he packs it with so much bullshit. But or I say bullshit, but just somebody in chat used the word superfluous stuff that's not necessary. You know?
I think that times travel is going to be perhaps the most interesting thing to come out when you ask, why should we worry about these things? Buckle up.
Fascinating. And my final question is probably the biggest question I can ask any guest. And I've asked quite a few of them. I have to say with very limited responses. So I'm asking two highly intelligent people this question now, which is, I happen to believe in God. And the reason I do, other than the fact I was reared as a Catholic by my mother, is because I genuinely think there must be a superior being out there who is able to answer this fundamental question in a way no human being has been able to answer it for me, which is, for those who believe in the Big Bang Theory, what was there before the Big Bang? In other words, what was nothing? And what was there before nothing? And because I do not believe a human brain can answer that question, there must be, de facto, a more superior thing out there that can. Sean.
Well, I'm glad to be the one who frees you from your religious convictions, because the human brain can absolutely tackle that question, and it does so all the time. I encourage viewers/listeners to listen to the upcoming episode of my podcast called Mindscape, where I talk to Nies F. Shorty and Phil Halper about exactly this question. What happened at or before the Big Bang?
Yeah.
We don't know the answer. We don't even know whether the Big Bang was the beginning.
Well, there you go.
So the fact that we don't know doesn't mean we can't know. Those are two very different statements.
Well, if you don't know, you can't know at the moment. Surely you have to
That's not remotely true, but
admit you don't know.
I don't know.
Like if I were to hold a card and say, do you know what's on the other side of this card? And you say, no, but you could know. I could flip it and you could know, right?
Oh, and we're doing science on it in the hopes that we will know.
Yeah, but with respect, Sean, with respect, it is utterly impossible. You will never, as a human being, be able to tell me what was there before nothing. How can you? You can't comprehend it, can you?
I come up with a theory. I show that the theory fits the data. That's how we do it.
What was there before nothing, then? Go on, best guess.
We don't know. My personal favorite theory is there was a pre-existing universe out of which our cosmos arose as a baby universe
what was there before
quantum
that?
fluctuation.
What was there before that?
No, it's infinite. It's infinite in time in both directions.
Base.
So what was there before? So you mean it's never ending?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Base.
I wrote a book, if you want to read it, Piers.
I do.
From Eternity to Here. It's a great book.
I do, but what's there before eternity?
There was no such thing as before eternity. Like, what is less than minus infinity?
Yeah, what eternity is defined as boundless. So how can you have before?
That's not a sensible question to ask.
Yeah, but I think it's a cop-out by you, if you don't mind me saying this very respectfully, to say that something is infinite, because if you're saying it's infinite, you don't have to answer the question. You've just made that up. You don't know it's infinite.
This very often happens in the progress of human knowledge, that a question that we thought was an interesting one becomes not answered, but shown to be uninteresting because we get a deeper understanding.
See, I'm sorry. I'm going to come to you, Eric, on this. That seems to me a very pompous answer.
Oh my God. I like that if you're just like a random person watching this, you come away thinking, I don't know, maybe Sean is not quite the smarter guy here, because he's given cop-out answers to Piers.
He's basically trying to apply a superior intelligence to a response to a lesser mortal by saying that my attempt to get this question answered is so stupid that there should be no need by the brain power in front of me to answer it.
Like, that's not really what he said. I wish I had a better history of science understanding, but it might be the case that we are investigating something scientifically and we think there's some very profound or insightful or paradigm shifting answer behind a particular thing you're investigating, and then once you figure out the answer or you figure out more information, you're like, oh, actually the answer to this question is not very interesting at all, and there's a different way to go, or you just have it and then you move on. If I thought hard enough, maybe I could remember examples of this. The four humors, yeah, but that was kind of just wrong. Somebody, science people, type in chat, I'm sure they'll answer this, but
No, it's exactly the opposite of that. I don't know why people are trying to psychoanalyze me and think about what I'm thinking of them. What I'm saying is the question of what happened before the Big Bang is prima facie a perfectly sensible question to ask. But we need to be open to the possibility that there is no beginning to the universe. That the universe is
but that is a ridiculous thing to say, because you know that your human brain cannot comprehend something that has no beginning. How can it? We can't.
I can comprehend the real numbers. They go from minus infinity to infinity. I don't see.
Yeah, I was going to say that's when the question there is well, what do you mean by comprehend? We're getting lost at language games right now. When you say comprehend, what does that mean? Because we use numbers all the time, and numbers there are multiple types of unlimiteds or infinities. I'm sorry, not unlimiteds. Infinities when we talk about numbers. So what do you mean when we say comprehend?
See why it's harder to comprehend infinity years versus 14 billion years. That doesn't make sense to me.
All right, Eric, am I mad?
No, I mean, look, one of the things I like, Piers, is that you invite me on this program often not to do battle, as we heard in the previous segment. So let me try something as an offering to the good Dr. Carroll, and you can tell me whether this matches anything, because I also share atheism at some level along with him. What I believe is that you're conflating three different category problems. One, you're talking about something observational, which might terminate at what we would call the surface of last scattering, the thing that we cannot see beyond with our instruments. That takes place along the lines of something let's say, called the cosmological model, which is a reduction of Einstein's field equations assuming greater symmetry. That is a 1, 3 problem where you have one dimension of time, 3 of space, and you can prove that there's something called an essential singularity in the center of a black hole, a Schwarzschild singularity, and an initial singularity in what would be called a Friedmann-Robertson-Walker metric. So that is a map of the territory that we are trying to observe. But there's a third thing, which is an assembly sequence, which also has an ordinal concept of development, which could be confused with a chronological one of time. What is it that built the manifold so that time could progress? Now, the thing that's truly radical about geometric unity, and I think Sean would probably agree with this if he's read it at all, and I'm not sure that he has, is that it is the only theory I know that begins from almost nothing and tries to get, and by theory of everything, we don't mean all knowledge, we mean a complete set of the rules of the universe. What it says is that 4 degrees of freedom are all that is necessary for the quark, lepton, CKM, PMS, et cetera, PNMS structure of the universe. That basically sweet, salty, sour, and bitter, or treble, mid, bass, and reverb is all that's necessary to create a universe. But the point of a theory of everything, which is almost never discussed, and by the way...
Like, I can't tell if this is autism or narcissism, or I can't tell what's going on here. Like, if somebody were to ask me, I'm trying to think of a field that I, like if a retard, not a retard, that's mean. If a random person with no understanding of much of anything was like, why do some notes sound happy together? I feel like my answer would be something along the lines of like, when you play 2 notes, there's like a frequency that, like, if you draw it out, it does this, and then things that are more consonant, like, have more things that line up, and things that are dissonant don't line up. Like, that would be like, it would be something like that. Like, you wouldn't break out, like I don't even know if I could do it in like signal terms, like when the period is blah, 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 and like just run off into the mathematical thing, like the period, blah, blah, blah. Like, what, like, why would you ever do that? You know that the person can't understand what you're saying. So you're just diarrheaing out random words to them because they don't know what you're saying. You could be explaining something more concisely. They're probably getting lost now. They have less of an understanding than if you would have just used something simpler. Less of an understanding than maybe when they even asked you the question. Like, the thing that's confusing me is, how can you not understand that? How can you not understand unless, so are you autistic? Like, you just have no social awareness? Or are you narcissistic? You think it makes you sound smarter, so you're going to break that explanation out? Are you trying to show off for the audience? I don't know. I can't tell.
Structure of the universe. That basically sweet, salty, sour, and bitter, or treble, mid, bass, and reverb is all that's necessary to create a universe. The point of a theory of everything, which is almost never discussed, and by the way, I would point out that I quite agree with Sean that philosophy, when done well, is an essential complement to understanding physics, lest we be tempted into the wrong kinds of thinking. What I would say a theory of everything is a theory that starts from minimal assumptions, covers all of the rules, and demotivates the further scientific study of the initial set of data used to construct the model. Not that the initial set of data is uninteresting, but that it be interesting to theologians and philosophers rather than be motivating to mathematicians and physicists. And what I would say is, if it's true, imagine we were on the branch where geometric unity has proven itself, and the good Dr. Carroll agrees. What I would say is, at that point, why there are 4 degrees of freedom is not a scientific question. I don't think anybody that I know would be motivated to try to figure out how to get 4 degrees of freedom from nothing. That would be an interesting question, and that is the question upon which your God hinges. But I would say that in the case of a scientific atheist, what we're trying to do is to come up with a complete set of the rules of chess, as it were, for the physical universe from minimal inputs, and those minimal inputs should have so little structure that they are demotivating to everybody who studies partial differential equations or group representations.
But just to be clear, Eric.
Like, what? Like, the production should kick in and be like, Piers, we need you to summarize what he just said for the audience.
Like Sean, I think I've got a point of where you both come to the same place here. You don't actually know, do you? What was there before nothing?
No, absolutely not.
I would love, I would love
to,
given I've only understood about 1/10 of what either of you has said for the last hour, I would like to end on a point where none of us know the answer to something, because it makes me feel slightly less stupid. Fascinating debate, gentlemen. I'm glad we ended up with a bit of unanimity at the end there. I appreciate you coming together. I realise you are at loggerheads about a few things. I suspect, as Eric said, Sean, if you spent a couple of days together over a few pints of foaming British ale, or whatever your tipple may be, you probably find you end up best buddies. And I would love to do that interview if you ever do that. So thank you both very much for joining me.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us, and Sean, thanks for doing this. Maybe a cocktail instead of some lager.
Bit bitter, just bitter to be clear. But thank you both very much. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly...
Oh boy. What do these comments look like? Wait. Nope, don't care. Okay. Piers, before we transition from quantum gravity, do you believe biological men should compete in women's sports? Okay, that was a good one. Eric is so insecure. He uses esoteric language to convey he's smarter, but he's not really saying anything. Smart people have a genuine interest in sharing wisdom. Don't act like Eric. Based. Okay. True. Damn. Okay. I cannot believe Eric really told Sean Carroll that he should go back to the physics department and spend less time on YouTube, LOL. Sean sees Eric the same way Eric sees Terrence Howard. True. Eric Weinstein could describe a cup of coffee in such a way that a barista wouldn't understand it. Okay, damn. Jeez, he got roasted in here.